In the 1860s, Southern kitchens relied on simple, sustaining ingredients: beef, root vegetables, onions, and whatever could be grown or stored. Today, I'm making a Civil War-inspired beef and turnip pie, the same kind of hearty meal that fed a family after a long day of work. Meat pies weren't just comfort food, they were practical. Wrapping meat and vegetables in pastry-stretched ingredients and made a filling meal for very little. Since the recipe does say use a heavy pot, I'm definitely going to use my Lodge cast iron Dutch oven. I'm going to start by prepping my cast iron pot and warming it up with some bacon grease before I add the salt pork. And yes, we do keep our bacon grease in a Betty Boop cup. I used a little over half the package of the 12-ounce salt pork. Chuck roast would have been a practical cut, affordable, sturdy, and meant to be slowly cooked until tender. Nothing fancy, just honest food designed to satisfy. Southern cooking in the 1860s blended British pie traditions and regional ingredients. Now I'm removing the crispy bits of salt pork, and then I'm going to add the cubed chuck roast to all of that flavorful salt pork fat. Onions, of course, were also heavily used. They were easy to grow, easy to keep. They brought depth to dishes without needing heavy seasoning. I'm now adding flour to the onion mixture to help get the gravy started because we don't want this to be runny. Almost seems a bit too dry to me, so I'm adding a dollop of beef broth. I've cubed the turnips, which were also a staple in 19th century kitchens. They stored well in root cellars and lasted through colder months. Slightly sweet, slightly earthy, they added substance to meals when ingredients were limited. Time to add everything back to the pot and 1.5 cups of beef broth. Now I'm going to measure with my Italian heart and just put a lot of pepper. I also added just a pinch of salt because of the salt pork, and then I added, I think maybe a teaspoon and a half of thyme. I know. I had intended on making the pie dough from scratch, but my husband did buy this as a backup, and I'm glad he did because I was starting to feel a little under the weather, and I just could not do the extra steps. In the 1800s, pies like this were just everyday food. They were influenced by British traditions but adapted with Southern ingredients. A lot of traditional meat pies back then usually only had a top crust, but there were some that did use bottom and top crusts. And so I'm going to go that route because I think we would prefer that. They would also traditionally either put butter chunks on top of the pie or an egg wash. I was so pleasantly surprised how this turned out. Using so few seasonings, this was still full of flavor, and I think we really love turnips. They were slightly sweet and full of their own flavor. Everything just really worked together to make this absolutely delicious. My husband said it might even be the best thing I've ever cooked, which I'm not really sure how to take that. Regardless, this is definitely going into our dinner rotation.